Good morning, ladies and gents. Welcome to my video this week on how not to fluff your training contract application form. I will start this with the usual caveat, which is this video is based on my own opinion and experience that I've had dealing with application forms and speaking to some recruiters from some firms, but I absolutely don't speak for the entire profession, so please don't take my advice as gospel. It's just my opinion, take it or leave it. Without further ado then, let's jump in to the first one, which I want to talk about, which is buzzwords. Increasingly, I'm seeing answers to application questions start with things like, I am innovative, creative, and ambitious. And I can see where you're going with this because it's attention grabbing, and you think by stating those criteria, which you know we're looking for, you've immediately ticked several boxes. However, I want to talk about a phrase which one of my co-workers likes, which is people who can't shoot straight often wear big hats. And what that means is that people often shout about things and draw attention to particular aspects of themselves to actually take away from the fact that they can't really do it. And that can sometimes be the case with buzzwords. It's so much better to use an example of all of those things than it is to use a buzzword. So for example, if you're saying you're creative, tell me about something unique that you've created and how successful it was. Or if you're saying you're committed, say something like, in addition to studying the GDL full time, I also secured 3 legal work placements in my Easter holidays and volunteered at the Citizens Advice Bureau on a Saturday afternoon. There you go, that is commitment right there. You don't need to say it, you've evidenced it, I know you're committed. And that is a much better way of doing things. So please always try and use examples rather than buzzwords where you can, they're much more effective. Next, rookie errors, and I'm not talking about the blatant ones like putting obviously the wrong firm name. I'm not even going to go there. I hope that you don't do that. But I'm talking about subtler ones, like you'd be surprised at how many application forms I see where people are applying to Irwin and Mitchell. That's not what we're called. Our name is Irwin Mitchell. You need to get that right. Similarly, Allen and Overy. It's not the word and, it's an and sign, and that is key and critical to their branding. And you need to pay attention to these things because getting that wrong, again, instant black mark, very difficult to recover from. Similarly, things like using yours faithfully or yours sincerely in the wrong place, again, such a rookie error and you really need to be careful about that. Addressing your cover letter to the wrong person, or another one is talking about an area of law that you're really interested in and you'd really like to do a seat in your training contract, but they don't offer that seat at the particular office that you are applying to. So you really need to make sure that you are doing your research properly and you're not screwing up your application form based on really rookie errors. And I always encourage you to get other people to read over your application forms, friends, parents, professionals, whatever, but these are things which they might not necessarily pick up either. So this is on you really to make sure you get those little things right because they're easy to get right, but they are so damaging if you get them wrong. Next one, another pet hate of mine, being passive. And what I mean by this is using passive verbs like assisted, helped, attending, undertook. All of these verbs are what I would call passive verbs, and it gives the impression that you didn't really take an active role in what was going on. You just sort of let this situation happen to you and you didn't really take anything from it or learn anything from it. So an example of this might be a situation where you were undergoing a legal work placement and as part of that you attended client meetings and you took notes and then you input some data onto a spreadsheet. However, a better way of saying this would be, whilst on legal work placement, I was responsible for preparing minutes of client meetings, drafting attendance notes, and processing and organising data onto the employment team's database. See, all of those are active verbs. You did exactly the same thing, but the second example shows what an active role you took in it and you're actually responsible for something, and it actually makes it seem like you had a really important role while you were on work experience, even though actually all you did was sit in client meetings and prepare notes. So when you are drafting your answers, really take care of the verbs you're using and make sure they are active and show what an important role that you played in whatever situation that you're trying to describe. Oh, another one is lack of examples and explanation. A really common one that I see is people telling me that they're members of X, Y, and Z society. Now, members can mean a whole lot of different things depending on the society that you join, and we know that being a member of something could simply mean putting in your email address and reading the monthly newsletter occasionally that comes into your inbox. However, being a member of something else could mean that you actually go to monthly meetings, you fundraise, you take an active role in managing whatever business it is that you're a member of. So make sure you explain and give examples of, again, the actual roles that you played within the situation that you're trying to describe, because being a member of something sadly doesn't mean that you've got any kind of attribute that we need as recruiters. You need to explain what skills that you have utilised and shown and gained through that membership in order for that to be a tick on your application form box. Okay, penultimate one, being boring. And I know that sounds really harsh, but you can have all of the best attributes in the world. You can have lists of extracurricular activities and awards that you've won and work experience that you've done, but if you don't make it jump off the page, then you're not going to get through. And this is a big problem. I see people who actually have a lot going for them, but they just haven't drafted it in a way that shines through. And a really good way to do this is through your cover letter and through the answers where you've got a slightly longer word count, because you can actually construct a really visually appealing answer if you construct your sentences and paragraphs in the right way. So if you've got something important that you want to say, make sure you start the sentence or the paragraph with that important thing and follow that theme all the way through your answer. So you're drawing attention right at the beginning of every sentence or every paragraph to something that you've achieved, which you think you are really proud of or is really exceptional. This is a lot to do with psychology. In this day and age where graduate recruiters are still people and not robots, controversial statement, then you need to think about getting into the mindset of the recruiter and what is going to appeal to them. As I've said in other videos, these recruiters are looking at potentially thousands of application forms. Put yourself into the mind of that person and imagine you've read 1,000 application forms which all say roughly the same thing. How are you going to draw someone's attention to your application form? And there's a big difference between just being impressive and being exciting, and you have to be both to get through, and that is the reality of the situation. So make sure when you're drafting these things, you use the active verbs like I've said, and you draw attention at the beginning of the sentence to the things which are really important and that you want to catch the recruiter's eye. You can hide a multitude of gaps and weaknesses in your application form by really creative and effective drafting within reason, which brings me on to my final point. Not hitting the criteria. This is a really big problem because the criteria are set and they will almost always be on the graduate recruitment website. And if they ask for 3 A's or they ask for 6 months work experience, if you do not have that, the chances of you getting through are so slim. And with the best will in the world and creative writing skills, if you do not have those criteria, you are more than likely not going to get through. And I know that this is really disheartening for those of you who perhaps don't have great A levels or don't have loads of work experience or do have weaknesses in your application. But the reality is you have to be realistic about where you're applying to. These application forms take so much time and so much emotional investment that it's just not worth putting together applications for firms that you simply aren't going to get through to because you don't hit the criteria. I'm a prime example of this, and this is what I did in my first year. We all know that my A levels aren't great, but I thought it's fine, I'll apply to wherever I want, I'll get around this because I've got mitigating circumstances, and that's the tactic that I want to use. Got absolutely nowhere in my first year, not even an assessment day, not even put through to the second stage on anything. So second year I took stock of that and I applied to the places where I did fit the criteria, and that was much more successful. So just try and curb your pipe dreams just a little bit, not completely, but just a little bit when it comes to where you're applying, because you just don't want to put yourself through the emotional pain and disappointment of getting rejected. Okay, those are my top tips for not fluffing your application form. I also have some SQE news, which is that the Law Society have actually published some really good guidance on what's going to happen when the SQE comes in, and a little bit more to do with the structure of it and what it's going to consist of. There are still some unknowns, cost for example, but there is now a lot more information out there. I'm not going to go through it all in this video because realistically all I would do is just read out this article word for word. So instead I'm going to link it in the description and let you read it for yourselves. As I always say, as more information becomes available, I will tell you as and when I find it out, and please do follow my socials, particularly LinkedIn and Twitter, if you're interested in general updates with the SQE and also across the legal profession. So I will leave it there. Hope you have a good week, and I will see you in my video next week. Bye guys.